Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
I have learned two things over the last couple of days. One, that the Browns have made official their coaching staff for this year. They got the pictures in, they got some releases, some things to talk about there. But also, I've also learned that if the Browns have a successful season this year and it's defensive led, we're going to get poached. We're going to get poached like crazy. We got a couple of guys apparently on this staff who are this close to being poached away. And we're going with Mike Rutenberg, who also might get poached. Like, as much as the Browns were dedicated to kind of locking in this staff and making sure that not much changed, which I think is the right thing to do. I also think that if you're the Browns, if you're Andrew Berry, if you're Todd Monkin, and you think you could have any level of success this season, you should start thinking about succession plans, because if you have a successful year, it is possible that teams are going to try to poach from your defensive staff. Like, Mike Rutenberg seems like a guy on the rise. It kind of reminds me of how people were talking about Mike McDonald when he first got the job as a DC out in Baltimore. Took Mike McDonald 2 good seasons, 1.5 good seasons, really, to get poached and to get the job over at Seattle. And then if you look at some of the guys underneath him, right, Efren Banda, who interviewed for defensive coordinator jobs last year, probably going to get poached if you have a good season, right? The DB's coach that they had to promote. There seems to be a lot of poach potential, which is a good thing. That means you have young coaches who people have high levels of respect for and think are up-and-coming risers in the league. So it's not a bad thing, but it is something to note going forward, right? The Browns have had to promote a lot of position coaches in order to keep them happy pay-wise and to prevent other teams, more importantly, from poaching them. Because you can make a lateral move if you want to as a position coach, but you can't. You can also make a promotion move, right? Like, so if somebody's offering you a promotion in the NFL, you are allowed to leave your contract to take that job. But what you can't do is a lateral move. My bad. I got it messed up at the beginning. So we're talking about 3 coaches they promoted. I think 1, to give them more money to make them happier, but 2, in order to kind of like prevent other teams from poaching, because I bet they felt the pressure of the poach this whole offseason. They promoted Brandon Lynch yesterday from DB's coach to passing game specialist. So now he's a double coach, right? DB's coach, pass game specialist. And then today they dropped what they were going to do to keep both Banda and Tarver, who were up for this defensive coordinator job. They promoted Tarver to run game coordinator on the defensive side of football. They also promoted Banda to defensive pass game coordinator on the defensive side. Now, again, I'm super happy that the Browns have been able to retain these coaches, especially Jason Tarver. That was my biggest concern throughout the head coaching search. Didn't really care much if they were able to keep Jim Schwartz or not, but Tarver is the guy that you could see his impact directly affect wins and losses, right? Like, he was by far the most impactful position coach on the team. And I would argue there's not a position coach in the NFL who has a better track record over the last couple of years than Tarver. That being said, he was so good at being a position coach, I did not want to lose him to be the defensive coordinator. Like, I thought he would be better suited in that positional role. They're going to be able to keep him there kind of by just expanding his role to the run game, so he'll help with the front 7. I don't think that's going to take too much responsibility away from him in that linebacker room. The big question here is, 1, Mike Rutenberg. What's his ability to get buy-in from all of these coaches, right? You got guys on the cusp of getting DC jobs. You got guys who are being told that they're next up, right? You know, potentially a lot of ego there. that you might have to deal with as a first-time defensive coordinator. How do you handle it? How do you get the buy-in, especially when some of these guys are older than you and have more experience than you and maybe think they should have the job that you have? That's going to be the biggest task for Rutenberg. Personnel-wise, the Browns are pretty easy to work with. They're a dream to work with, right? And then if you get buy-in from these coaches, I mean, this is a great staff of defensive coaches. I'm not going to be shocked if in 5-6 years we're talking about a staff right now that has 3 or 4 defensive coordinators and maybe a head coach or 2 in this staff, right? Like, that's how good of a staff it is. People speak highly of it. Look at what they've been able to accomplish. Look at the development on the defensive side of the ball. Look at what we've been able to get out of so many flyers on defense. Like, if you want to know what a barometer is for coaching and development in the NFL, a lot of people like to use penalties. I don't think that's an accurate barometer because penalties can happen for a number of reasons. Most of the time, they're player related. I think a good way to kind of measure coaches is like, hey, what do you do with these 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round picks that you're being asked to develop? What kind of roles do you find for these guys? How useful? How much use can you get out of guys who you're given a chance to, right? Myles Garrett is easy to get the most out of. That's not going to take a rocket scientist. But being able to figure out how to take undrafted Ronnie Hickman and turn him into a starting safety, well, that's difficult. Being able to take Devin Bush, who at the point of his career where he signed to Cleveland was so bad in his previous stops that I put it on my mama that he wasn't going to start. That's how bad Devin Bush was before he got to Cleveland. Go look at the tape. It was trash. The idea of Devin Bush starting when he got to Cleveland was ludicrous. For him and this staff to be able to take Devin Bush from there to a legitimate candidate to get paid this offseason says a lot about the development of this staff and the work that they've done defensively. Hell, we had Sam Webb out there last year covering Jamar Chase, and he wasn't getting cooked. Remember all the concerns that we had during camp about how terrible our slot corner situation was going to be? And then, do you remember really talking about it during the year? Because it wasn't an issue. That's the DB's coach. That's the safeties coach. That's the linebackers coach. I just gave you an example for every single coach that got promoted of them doing an excellent job in their role. And those are just single examples. I can name more. The work with Martin Emerson, the work with Tyson Campbell, him getting better, the fact that Greg Newsome was playing his best football when he was in Cleveland, got traded to Jacksonville, looked much worse, and then we got Tyson Campbell, and then Tyson Campbell played his best football in Cleveland. Tells you the quality of coaching on that defensive side of the ball. The coaches are good. The players are good. The reputation for Mike Rutenberg is good. The real question is, can he get the buy-in necessary to get all of this to work for him, right? For those of you who watch, I'll go Pokemon. We'll go Pokemon because it's the best example I can think of. In the show Pokemon, there is a Charizard, right? There's a big, for those of y'all, most of y'all should know who a Charizard is, but Charizard's a high-level Pokemon, right? It's not no average Pokemon. It's a big, strong Pokemon. But Ash is not at the level to where he can control that dragon, right? Charizard's a big-ass dragon type thing. You know what I mean? Well, he's not really a dragon. It's kind of like a dinosaur dragon. Google Charizard if you don't know what I'm talking about. You'll see what I mean. But Charizard is too powerful for Ash at the beginning of the series. So Charizard don't do what Ash want him to do. That's the real question with Mike Rutenberg, right? Is he going to be able to get reins on the dragon, right? Is he going to be able to get on the horse and get that horse to do what that horse needs to do? Because that horse can be the best defense in the NFL. He's just got to be able to get control of it. That's the only question. And there are some concerns here, right? With all these promotions, you do worry, are there too many chefs in the kitchen? You got a pass game coordinator, a passing specialist, and then you got a run game coordinator. Now, this might just be how Mike wants to get it done. And these promotions were there, and these were the obvious candidates for it. So that's how it works out. But it is a lot right? It does feel like a lot of chefs in the kitchen. Hopefully, Todd Monkin has a way of managing that for Mike. Hopefully, Mike has a way of managing that, because if you get all of these pieces to work together and evolve, this could be the best defense in the NFL. I think it already is. So that's kind of the news there on the defensive side. We're going to talk more about what Todd Monkin had to say about these hires after this commercial break from Sleeper. Talk to you guys real quick about Sleeper, the app for daily fantasy, regular fantasy. And now, if you look at the pick section on the Sleeper app and go to the team section, you have predictions that you can now use on the Sleeper app. You can choose winners of games. So let's say you're a Cavs fan, the Cavs play the Wizards or something like that, and you think the Cavs are going to beat the Wizards, you can pick the Cavs to beat the Wizards in that kind of scenario. For me personally, I went with the Cavs getting the championship this year. And of course, I had to throw in the same for the Cleveland Browns winning the next Super Bowl. So if you want to join in the fun on that, make sure you join the Sleeper app. If you also want to use the Sleeper app for all the other things I mentioned, make sure you use the promo code Worst Take. Get a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Make sure you join the Sleeper app. So Todd Monkin released a statement on all of his coordinator hires. I thought it was interesting getting some insight from Todd about his input in the process, because again, that was another thing I talked to Daniel Afuise about, which is how involved was Todd in this process. It seems like Todd was extremely involved in the process, and I think that's really, really a good sign. So we'll start with Travis Schweizer, who he said he was our run game coordinator, and that's where it all starts, with your ability to run the football. So he's ready for this challenge. He's intentional, intelligent. He can teach. It's an important word right there. Now, he didn't leave the most written about Travis. I would assume this is because he's super familiar with Travis. This was his run game coordinator under him in Baltimore. It's basically the same role, just expanded responsibilities here and there. He's ultra familiar with Travis. Like, there was no question whether that was a Todd Monkin hire or not. Then he talks about the defensive coordinator, Mike Rutenberg, where he had a lot more to say. He's been in a similar system, but not the same exact system, because Jim Schwartz was unique. And they can stay attacking style, but then there's attacking style, which is what they've done up front. And I think that the background of being a 4-down attacking style, but not the exact, adds some things that they wanted done before. I thought they would mesh really well with our current staff, and that was a big part of that. I also thought his energy and his ability to teach, his juice, it popped, and that's what we're looking for. So high energy, right? You got high energy from Mike. He thinks he can teach. So that's an important thing right there, right? That's a through line throughout this entire staff. You're going to hear him say this about every coach he's hired. He thinks they can teach. I think Todd is here, and Todd is demonstrating what he's here for, which is Todd is not just here to be head coach. Todd is here for a very specific purpose. And again, I'm going to use the Andrew Berry term because I find it fascinating that he dropped this corporate jargon on us in a football press conference. I would never find this non-fascinating. Todd Monkin is here at a specific point in the Cleveland Browns life cycle. And it's at the beginning of it. Todd was brought in because they felt like Todd was the best teacher. And then you see what Todd's doing. He's bringing in the offensive coordinator that he thinks can teach, a defensive coordinator that he thinks can teach. They expect to get younger. They expect to develop guys. And I think that's going to be what they're trying to do over the next couple of years. Are they going to win the Super Bowl in 2026? Probably not. Probably not going to win it in 2027. But are they going to try to build a foundation like Seattle did, right? Because if you look at what Seattle did, that was a 4-year build. That was 4 years of draft, 4 years of development, and then in the final year, they get their quarterback and they go to the moon. That's what the Browns are trying to do here. They spent last year developing guys. They're going to spend this next year developing guys, and they're going to try to get progressively better and better and better over the next couple of years. And then they're hoping year 3, year 4 comes around, year 2 for Todd Monkin, year 3 for Todd Monkin, that they're ready to win. And hopefully Todd's also the guy who can take them there. But if he's not, they might have to make a move. But it's really about teaching. That seems to be the focus of this coaching staff. And I'm going to be honest, that makes me feel much better about everything that they're doing. Let's see what he had to say about the special teams coordinator, Brian Storr. First off, his journey, going from Cal, playing special teams a little bit in the NFL, into coaching, out of coaching, into the business world, and then back into coaching, being with one of the best special teams to ever do it with Rich, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, Matt LaFleur, just absolutely standing on the table for him was huge. Unbelievable presentation when he was interviewed. He was more than ready. It was obvious when I got done interviewing him that we'd have to have him here. So it seemed like that guy blew him away. Okay. It seems like legitimately, like Travis Schweitzer is brought in because Todd is super familiar with him. He trusts Travis and he thinks that Travis has a bright future. It seems like Mike was brought in because Mike blew him away. It seems like Brian was brought in because Brian blew him away. Hopefully those processes are good. Hopefully Todd Monkin has a good eye for this stuff. Hopefully this staff has good levels of cohesion. But again, I love the through line throughout the coaching staff. Teach, 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 teach. That's been the focus since Todd Monkin has been hired. Teach, 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 teach. I think this is important because if you look at the landscape of football, there are a lot of guys who can go through and play a lot of football. They never get taught how to play football. Like Anthony Richardson's a perfect example of this, right? I'm watching some of Anthony Richardson's tape here, and I'll do a film breakdown. Hopefully before March, I'll get that out. But I'm watching some of Anthony Richardson's tape, and it's like, oh, he's never been taught how to play football. Like, he's obviously been taught how to run some plays. He's been taught how to do specific things that teams want to do. But nobody has just sat that kid down and just taught him from the basics to the calculus, right? From 1 + 2 to advanced calculus. Nobody's ever really sat down and taught Anthony Richardson football. They've taught him how to do things that they think can win games, but they haven't really taught him football. And I don't know, maybe he's a guy, if you teach him how to play football, he gets much better at it. I mean, that's what happened with Sam Darnold. That's what happens with a lot of guys. Here's the problem with the modern system of football, right? At every level, a lot of these guys aren't being developed. They're being put in positions to help the programs that they are in win, because football has gotten results-based even down to the high school level. So you're a guy like Anthony Richardson, you could play pretty much peewee to high school football. Nobody's going to teach you a single fucking thing about football because you're big and you can run fast, right? The story that I think always comes to mind is the Derrick Henry story, right? Where Derrick Henry's getting yelled at his first day at Alabama spring practice because he doesn't know how to pass protect. And then they ask Derrick Henry, how do you not know how to pass protect? And he says, when I was in high school, they just handed me the ball and told me to run. Okay. And you go and you talk to a lot of these guys who got to these Power 5 schools, who were top level athletes, who just went to like regular public school for a high school. They'll tell you the plan wasn't very complicated when it came to them. It was, you are athletic, run the football. It's why like the difference between high school and college is so underrated. It's a massive difference in the complexity of the game. And then you go from college to the NFL where the complexity is not as much of a difference complexity-wise, right? NFL is more complex than college, but it's not like a giant leap like it is in high school. But It's the speed and the athleticism of the game that gets you there, right? And think about it like this, man. If you are a high school coach and you get gifted an Anthony Richardson, somebody who's 6'5", 220 pounds, and can run like a deer, are you going to really put a ton of time into teaching them a 5-step drop, a 3-step drop? You're going to install, a mesh and red zone scissors, and you're going to teach them how to read different coverages when teams aren't even going to be running all those different coverages. You're going to teach them how to play in the pocket and be disciplined when you know that you could just tell this kid to run right and left, install a couple counter plays, maybe a little quick slant RPO on top of that, and you can win a state championship. Now, you would hope, because coaching is supposed to be about developing, not exclusively winning, especially when we're talking about lower levels of football. I think we've gotten to the point to where ring culture has infected to the point to where people are talking about winning the championship in goddamn Pee-wee football. You shouldn't give a fuck who wins the championship in PAL 6, in Pee-wee, whatever like lower level of football. You shouldn't care about who's winning the championship in football until maybe high school. Like, that's the level where winning starts to matter. But before that, it really shouldn't. And there's a lot of football players like Anthony Richardson that are immensely talented. And because they're immensely talented, nobody feels the need to actually teach them football on a comprehensive level, because you just need to teach this dude what you need to install in order to win a state championship off of the backs of his athleticism. That's really what you get taught. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case for Anthony Richardson. When he got to Florida, it looked like more of the same, where it's like, hey, we can win games with this guy just running. We don't really got to teach him that much. We don't got to teach him comprehensively how to read through all of this stuff, because if we teach him that, he's not going to play well. And if he doesn't play well, we can't have this kid on the field. And if we can't have this kid on the field, we have our best athlete on the bench. So why do all of that when we can install a couple of RPOs, install 10 or 12 plays, teach them how to read coverage 1 or 2 ways, and then get them on the field, and we can have them out there as a weapon? This happens in college football. Hell, it happens in the NFL. And then you end up with a 20-year-old who's a top 5 draft pick because, oh my God, fucking look at the guy. He's 240 pounds, and he runs a 4.4. And because that's the case, nobody ever feels the need to teach him football. And he ends up being a 23-year-old quarterback who does not know football at that age, and now he's behind. My point of bringing up this story isn't to advocate for trading for Anthony Richardson. My point is, a lot of players are like Anthony Richardson. A lot of players aren't taught football. And if the Browns want to focus on teaching football, that's going to benefit them greatly in the long run. You can play this game for a long time and not learn it. What the Browns are trying to do is they're trying to teach people football. They're trying to get coaches that can help these young players learn the game, that can help these young players develop fully. I think that's an admirable focus for where the Browns are. Is it going to result in a tons of wins early in this run? Probably not. We're probably talking about 7 wins, 8 wins, maybe 9 if things go really, really well. But will it help the Browns in the long term if they commit to this approach, and they commit to developing young players, and they commit to teaching young players instead of just throwing them out there and letting them burn in the fire that is the NFL? Yeah, it will help them out. At some point, somebody needs to commit to teaching these young players how to play football. If the Browns are saying we'll be that team, I think it will benefit them, because guess what? That's what the Seattle Seahawks did 3 years ago, 4 years ago, actually. They said, we're going to start trying to teach these guys football. And they brought in Mike McDonald, and he did the same thing. You got to teach these guys how to play, and I like that that's the emphasis there. Because if you look at the wider football world, you're seeing less and less emphasis on teaching football and more emphasis on winning games. And those things aren't mutually exclusive. You can win a lot of football games at a lot of different levels of college football and not learn a single goddamn thing. You can lose a lot of football games at a lot of different levels of football and learn a ton. I mean, what John Elway was fucking terrible win-loss record-wise in college. There's no such thing as a developmental league for football. Every football league is dependent on winning games. Maybe you can argue that the spring league is more developmental than that. But most of the time we're talking about major football, college and pro. Those teams are trying to win. They're not trying to teach anybody anything. That's not the focus, right? Maybe some position groups at some schools have that focus because they can afford to. But Ohio State trying to win football games. They're not trying to teach football players. They're trying to win games. If they could do a little teaching along the way, cool. But they're trying to win games. You know what I mean? They're not going to sacrifice the win-loss record to teach. They're not going to do that, right? The Jim Tressel days are over. You know what I mean? The same thing's true for any top program in any other conference. The same thing's true for Indiana, everything else. They are trying to win football games at those levels. They aren't really, and they are willing to sacrifice the teaching, which is why you get so many guys who get to the league don't know football, and it takes them a while, right? So we'll see what happens going forward. But I like that I'm hearing them focus on teaching because that tells me that they are more aligned, at least from football operations to Andrew Berry. We'll see where Jimmy is on all of this shit. But it seems like there's some alignment there between this operation, the front office operation, and what the goals are over the next couple of years. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.